Good morning, everyone. It's a small group, so if you want to get off track, I'm fine with that. So I'm going to be open to jumping around. I'm a very non-linear presenter. I can't even run a slideshow. I have to have all the slides on the left ready to jump around. Um, my name is Tony DePreto, and I actually work at St. Andrew's Episcopal School in Mississippi. Um, I could have been invited by mistake. I'm not sure. But I'm originally from Kentucky, and when I started my career, I worked in Kentucky, and I've just kind of maintained organizational relationships since then. Um, I'm currently the Chief Information Officer. I've worn a lot of different hats in my life and worked in a lot of different places. And today, what I want to talk about is an AI framework I've been working on. I did this presentation recently at a college, and there were a lot of students there, and quite a few of them were wearing their headphones. So I thought the presentation went really well, but obviously they're wearing their headphones. So, noise canceling, not even listening. I left and got an email from the organizer, and he said, "The kids love you, they want you to come back." So I'm a little worried because I don't see any headphones out here in the audience. So please participate. I like questions. I don't mind being interrupted. I just want to reiterate that. Here's the About Me screen. I'm going to move on. If you want to know anything about me, you can check out my LinkedIn. I really want to focus on the topic today. I have set up a form for, obviously you don't have to use the form if you're in the room, but you can if you want to. For people who are watching the stream, they can use the form. When you fill out the form, your request goes to AI and it shows up on my phone. So AI reads it, determines if it's valid, if you're trying to just troll me, reframes it, and sends it to me so that I can answer it. And it does try to tell me if you are trolling me so that I don't have to answer it. So I have that up here, so I'll see those as they come in. I was at a meeting with my ISC Squared chapter a couple of years ago, and we were talking about AI. Now, I am the only K-12 member of the chapter. So all of these people are like super nerds and security people, most of them a lot smarter than I am. They work in the military, law enforcement, law offices. We have some attorneys who are attorneys and CIOs or security officers. And we were going through why none of them can use AI at all in their offices. None of it's compliant. Even right now, none of the services that most schools are using are compliant in secure environments. So I started asking them, if it were compliant, what would it look like? And that's how it started. So I started building out different concepts, and it's gone through a lot of different iterations. And I call this a framework because I have software to show you how it works. So this isn't theoretical. I'm going to run a live demo, which multiple people told me absolutely don't run a live demo because it won't work. It will break in the middle of the presentation. So that could happen, but I have to run a live demo because I have shown this to people and they didn't believe that it worked and they thought I was faking it. So I've decided I'm not doing that anymore. I'm running live demos. So I call this a framework because you can implement it in your existing systems and you can choose what services you want to use. Meaning, if you want to use OpenAI service, you can use that. If you want to use Gemini, you can use that. In this demo, I'm using OpenAI, Anthropic Claude, OpenAI's image system, DALL-E. I have some other ones, but those are the three that I'm using today. And they work in tandem in workflows. Each one of them does the job that it needs to do. Now I have this set up so that we're going to trigger it by asking it questions. But that's not really what we're talking about. We're talking about your student information system. This is the scope today. And we're talking about an AI that sits and is monitoring data and does things automatically for you. This isn't something you actually have to prompt. It's just something you have to set up and then let it go. Just let it work. And that's how it's actually designed. It's actually designed to be kind of a silent employee, if you will, sitting between you and your information system, but not stealing all your data. So I'll skip over the story. So the main features of this framework, it's AI service independent. It uses localized data storage. This is very important. I did a security analysis recently on the DeepSeek system. I'm sure you've seen it. The DeepSeek file uploader will take 400 and some odd files. It will process them and give you a return, except the bulk of them can't be processed, so it just tells you it can't handle them. But those files are then stored and used later. You can see that actually playing in their uploader. Like you actually can just see it. It can handle 200 files that are executable. It will take executable files. It's not going to run them, it's going to steal them. Whenever you're uploading files into any of these systems, they go through a very convoluted process to be converted. Even with OpenAI, even if you pay for it, the file goes in and it goes to another set of servers to be translated and then sent back over to the AI. And then that file sits somewhere and we don't know where it's at, how long it's there, and we can't remove it. So if you're working with student data in spreadsheets and you're uploading it, well, it's going to be somewhere for a long period of time. And if you're working somewhere where you need to be compliant with data, that's a really bad practice. So the Sapphire framework keeps all of your data in your cloud. So if you're in Google Drive, if you're in Azure, whatever, it only uses files that have already been put in your cloud. It creates files in your cloud, and it works with data in your cloud. So it stays there, and it all goes in your logging. So if you have logging set up or some kind of other security handling controls, it all goes through that. So it stays within your cloud. When the data goes to these AIs, the AIs are stateless, kind of like a stateless firewall. They process it, they send it back, and they don't remember that they've ever done it. So the only time it has your data is in the processing, and that is still encrypted. It is true that if somebody sitting somewhere could decrypt it, like in OpenAI's infrastructure, they could try to steal your responses coming back out. That's totally true, but it's very unlikely. And it's one of those security controls that most of us have to relinquish because we're accepting the encryption and that it is actually encrypted. The framework is team-based. So if you put it in a chatbot, which I have to show you today, so it's easier for us to test it, you actually can be in a team with it, and each person in the team can ask it questions, and everybody can see the response. But if it makes a document for you, it only go, like if you ask it to make a document, it only goes into your cloud. It doesn't actually go to your friend's cloud or your coworker's cloud. You have to still share that. And I like to say it has minimal prompt effort. So if you have to struggle to get your AI to give you information, it's not very useful. So this has prompts set up in workflows. So yes, you can just ask it questions just like you normally do if you have a chat interface. But if there's something that you do every day, like maybe you want an attendance report every day. Maybe you want missing grades report every Wednesday. Maybe you want to make an at-risk list of students every Friday. You don't need to like talk to it. You just shoot off the workflow and it just runs. So that's why I say it has minimal prompt effort. You're not constantly trying to like get the AI to do work for you. It's set up and it's ready to roll. There's auditing and accountability with this type of implementation. Again, because it's going through your existing controls. So you have logging, right? So if you send an email to somebody and there's a dispute, someone in IT can pull that email and check it. All of this data can flow through those same systems. So you can capture it, you can evaluate it. And because it's within your cloud, you can even brand your output. And I'm not really going to get into this, but I recently, for some people that I know, set this up for their company. So when they want to do a letter for new clients, it automatically puts it inside their letterhead. It looks the same every time. They're not asking it to do it. They're just typing in, they're choosing the workflow, it makes the letterhead, and they move on with their day. If they have to sit there and constantly tell it to format it the correct way, that's not really helpful. That's a significant waste of their time. Okay, before we get into the demo, I would like to talk about data access in the old days, around 2023. Now, I know it's early in the morning, but I think that is a really good joke. All right, so if you have a school district and you have PowerSchool or another type of system running, all of your data is in a database. It could be spread out amongst a bunch of different servers, and somehow all that data is organized, and then you have a connection, usually an API, to let you read that data outside of the system. So if you don't want to go in and download it all, you have to connect to the system and pull the data into something. All right, then the data needs to be adjusted because it's not readable. It's too messy, it doesn't make sense, the numbers are in the wrong format. So usually another piece of software or a person is transforming your data, and they're manipulating it. So just like to reiterate that a person, maybe one person, could be manipulating all of the data for your entire school district because it has to be reformatted. If they write an algorithm to do it, that's great. It's automated, and it can also be full of problems. Then after it's adjusted and transformed, it would go into another state so that normal people can read it. That means it goes from the data transformer to somebody who's going to put it into a dashboard, or they're going to format it so it can be emailed. So there's another stage where the data is processed so that it's more useful. Maybe it's pre-filtered. So you transform it, and then you make a set of data just for Monday and another one just for Friday. There's a million different ways to do it. And then it goes to the dashboard system, which we see all the time. So maybe you're a Power BI person, or maybe you're a Looker Studio, or maybe you're just using something like the at-risk matrix in PowerSchool, which I've configured a million times. And no matter how many dashboards I make, I don't actually believe anybody looks at them. So I could be too cynical, but I don't think most people look at the dashboards. That is a lot of steps, though. Okay, so in this design, there are multiple points of failure. There's multiple people between your data and the end user. And not only that, you don't even really know if it's being delivered, because we've moved to this interface system. So it goes into an app or it goes into a dashboard. Sure, we can look at page counts, but looking at interactivity and how useful it is, that's completely different. Data access with AI is different. So the concept is that you have your database just like you do now and your API, and this is a horrible color. I will fix it after the presentation. That says API. And it goes straight to the AI. And using the prompt workflow, the AI says, okay, here comes the data. What am I supposed to do with it? Do I email it? Do I send a text message? Do I make a document? Do I send it, process it for a dashboard? So the AI is actually using pre-made workflows to grab your data and process it and send it to where it needs to go. And the upside of that is that you can annoy people a million different ways to get them to look at something. So you can have the AI shoot off an email, send a text message, and create documents that have notifications on them. You have a lot of different ways to get this information around, but your single point of failure here really is your workflow prompting. Now, when you get into like making prompts that you're going to use in your workplace, it's a little bit different. So what I like to tell people is it's not about writing 10,000 prompts. It's about writing one prompt and testing it 1,000 times and making sure that every single one of those results is correct. And you can actually do that very rapidly once you get the hang of this process. And that means that you can trust your output. You also can moderate your output if you want to, because it's being logged. So you can choose a percentage of the AI responses and just look at them and make sure that they're good. Now, this doesn't negate the stuff that's in your system. You still have your internal reports and all of that, but it does create a different way for us to get data and get it to who needs to get it without having multiple people in the middle. I'd also like to make a point that this is not an agent. So an AI agent would actually sit inside of your database or your student information system. An agent would be built in, for example, to PowerSchool. It would be built in, hovering around, doing stuff all the time. You may not know what it's doing. That is outside the scope of this framework. If you can't monitor what it's doing, control it, and stop it from doing things, then you're back to simply basically using the web page and uploading data to it because you've lost all control. You've let the agent go crazy. This doesn't do that. This tells AI what to do and when to do it, and it lets you monitor it and shut it down if you need to. And it's not storing any information. I just had a meeting 2 weeks ago with a vendor, and they use Copilot, a very large vendor. They're in 18 states. They use Copilot and they resell it. And it's quite expensive if you're not nonprofit. It's quite expensive. And they had an incident already where Copilot agent was running and someone in the finance department did not have their drive permissions for their OneDrive set properly. Now, I don't know in your experience, but if the person in the office has to set the permissions, we already have a problem. So anyway, the Copilot ingested a bunch of financial data that people in other departments weren't supposed to get. But when they asked questions, they got the data. They didn't get the spreadsheet, they just got the data because the Copilot ingested it. It loaded it into its local memory for the company. So these are serious issues, especially if you're dealing with anything related to compliance. So in this model, that doesn't happen because there's no agent sitting there running all the time without some level of control. All right, before I get into the actual live demo, which again, I was advised not to do, does anyone have any questions? Let me see if I'm getting anything on my screen. Okay. I'm not typing because I know I will make too many typos and I will type too fast. So I tried that last time and I was all over the place trying to like type, look up, and run the presentation. All right, this is what I would call a public demonstration. So this is data from a search. So the AI went out, searched the internet, and came back with these examples. Here are some interesting things when you implement a framework like this properly. First, there are no advertisements. As soon as the search engine I'm using figures this out, they will probably shut this down. But you can strip out the advertisements because the AI knows what the ads are. Secondly, it gives you links to its sources. These companies that say they can't give you attribution, that is not correct. They're just not giving you attribution. They may not want you to know where the data has been processed from. And a lot of the data that you might be getting from AI might not be training data. They might be looking at actual live data on the internet, processing it and mixing it up so that they're not paying certain fees to do that. I'm not really certain, but I can tell you that I am not the world's greatest programmer, and by default, OpenAI gives me links. So I get attribution pretty easily. Now, all this is really doing is summarizing a Google search for you or some type of search. But I like to show this because if you wanted to deploy a search engine for a group of people that needed to have some limitations on content, you could do it with this. So AI can go out and do that. If you've ever tried to do that with Google Search API, you will know that it's no easy feat to program all of that. There's almost no programming here. This is one file with a single prompt that does this. Once it's deployed, everybody in the organization can use it over and over with the same results. And I've got one for Wikipedia I'll do later. All right. I have a report in my student information system. And now, when you make reports in your student information system, you're making a report. You're not just saying, show me all the grades ever in the world. That doesn't happen. You're saying, I want to see this year's grades, or I want to see grades for last week, or whatever. You have some parameters in your report. And this really isn't any different. The grades come from the report out of the student information system. So this is live. It's pulling the grades. It's pulling a list of students. This is pulling grade 12 students. And then as the principal, this is my phone number for the demo, it actually will summarize and send me what's happening to these students who it is considered the most at risk. So I told it what at risk meant and what I'm looking for. Now, each school and each setup is different, but I told it to send me the information, and I also told it to anonymize the results. So if I were to pull this in front of you right now, the student names will show up. But when they go to AI, it actually removes the names, anonymizes it, and kicks it back so that I can run it in a demo. Now I'm asking it to look for problematic subjects or classes. That means I want to know which classes are having the most problems for the grade 12 students. And that's a strategic move. Instead of putting the word teacher, I put classes, okay? So I'm not gonna pull individual teacher, and I'm just gonna pull student information or class information. And now I'm going to run an attendance report. Now the data, when it comes up, before I do this, I'm using this chat bot. So this is Google Chat. So this actually is in Google Chat within my school's domain. You can tell the AI, hey, for chat, it can be this long. For email, it can be this long. And for SMS, it can be this long. You actually can tell it to summarize it for different outputs. And you don't really have to tell it much more than that. So OpenAI is fully aware of how many characters you can put in an SMS message. So it can figure that out. If you're doing an integration with the chatbot, what's really, really interesting and very frustrating is that when people use free AI services, those services are very smooth and tricky. So they have something called streaming. You know, when you're typing and it types it back and it does line by line, that smooth feedback, that serves two purposes. One, it really engages your brain. And two, if the AI service isn't working, which is very common, they have a bunch of stock sentences they start using to make you think it's working, and they never tell you that it's offline. When you're using anything that has logging, like where you're really checking the data before it goes back to the person, the streaming doesn't really work because it's only going to stream into the filter or the log, and then it's going to come to you all at once. So it's kind of interesting when people are using it because when you're using it this way, the data just kind of pops up on your screen as opposed to like streaming and reading. And now we'll ask it about attendance. The reason I'm using the SMS as kind of the main delivery is because that is the plan for the next level of the implementation that I'm doing. So it's a set of reports that people need, and it's just going to go to their phones automatically the same time every week so that they can see them. And I find that to be very useful, and it'll be a narrow group of students based on certain criteria. Just what you can focus on or who you should focus on that week. And when we're done, if you want to check these results and make sure that they're real, I am happy to let you look at this data from the SIS directly, the student records, on that laptop there. I just won't put it live. But you can come down and look at it and be like, okay, the AI actually understands and doesn't work. If it didn't work, I wouldn't use it and I wouldn't be here. I actually use this implementation for myself. So I built these tools initially to help speed up certain things that I do, and I've just extended them out. I also built a tool so that when my wife was shopping, she could determine the lowest cost per ounce between any items, regardless of what store she was in. She can take what's on Amazon, put it in, what's on Costco, and figure out what's actually cheaper. So I built a lot of different things. And if that didn't work, I would have heard about it. Okay, I would have definitely heard about it if that didn't work. Okay. All right, first off, don't get overwhelmed at this screen. I'm running a lot of demos. I have a lot of stuff in here. To set this up to set something like this up, it's about, I don't know, 3 or 4 scripts max. It really just depends on what you want to do. The actual connection to your database to pull the data out is pretty simple. And I built connectors for a few different student information systems already, and I try to give those out to people and do webinars and show people how to implement them. So they take the script, we put it in their Google Workspace, and they start generating their data. A lot of people just pull the data into a spreadsheet and just work with it in a spreadsheet. It really just depends on what you want to do. But I'm running a lot of different demos doing different things, so that's why I have all these files. So this should generate an at-risk letter. Now I'm actually going to go in here. Most of these cloud-driven, what they call low-code systems are the same. So they have some kind of triggering mechanism. This one is based on time. I'm going to turn this off because I'm going to run it manually. But you can easily go in here and do, this is the most common one that I do, a week timer. And just to give you an idea of how effective or how powerful this is, what kind of scope you can do, with the free tier inside of Google, you can easily process anywhere from, depending on how many columns of data you're pulling, anywhere from 10 to 15,000 students per data pool at the free tier. And you can do that probably 200 times a day, and you'll never go over it. If I have to estimate it, Google makes it a little hard to estimate, I think on purpose, but it's very cost effective. And you'll find that I'm not sure what everyone's using, but Oracle has a free tier that does the same thing. Microsoft has a tier that does the same thing. So you actually can pull a lot of data for free and automate it. This is where the automation is. It's where you go in and say, I want you to run the at-risk report every Monday at 7 a.m. So I'm asking it to make a report, and if it works, I should get a new report in my Google Drive in just a second. I made a fake template, but it it will use the same headers and footers over and over. So if you have a branded letter that you might use, for example, let's say you need to generate letters or something that's official, AI can actually do that for you. And I haven't put a lot of time in the formatting because I'm telling it to anonymize the information. But if you weren't anonymizing the information, you wouldn't have the little asterisks in there. You would just have the student name. Does that make sense? All right, does anyone have any questions? Are you ready for AI to transform how you do all of your work? Are you ready to plug it in and just trust it? Probably not. I definitely encourage, I'll leave a few minutes, everybody to come down. You can look at the data. I promise you that it's solid. I also, you know how I'll let you read that prompt? I don't actually put the prompts like that. There's a different way that I do it, but I've got some like plain language prompts for people to read. I've got one I'll show you in a minute, which I think is pretty funny. Um, there's other things though that you can do besides just data governance and staying safe. Journalism class. Kids want to generate images. Images go into a yearbook or other publications. Like you may even have students doing graphic design for the school. The big issue right now is ownership. There's multiple lawsuits right now on who owns AI-generated data. What I can tell you is you have to show some proof that you actually personally generated the information. You need some kind of log. You need something to show that you, as a user, under your name made the image with AI. If you don't, the only side of that argument is the AI side. They're the only ones that have the log. So working with the journalism class, we incorporated DALL-E into a chatbot for the kids. Now, there are a lot of different things you can do with images. This does produce safe for work images, which I'm happy about because that was a big problem that we had. But also, you can get images that are all different sizes and different qualities. So you want to be able to maybe have some people who can just kind of generate the cheapest version of an image versus a handful of students who might need high resolution copies. So you can specify based off of the users in their organizational unit or in their class what they're able to do. So what that means is that within Google Workspace, for example, you can say if this user is in grade 12 in this organizational unit, they're allowed to use this model. They don't have to know that. You've just built that in the back end. You're controlling that. Everybody else has to use the cheaper model. The first time I showed this to students, all they did was generate unicorn pictures, and OpenAI has a limit for how many pictures an organization is allowed to generate in a minute. And they exceeded the image generation limit immediately. And I'm like, and then I was like, oh, are you making stuff for school? And they were all making unicorns. So I'm not sure why. I know many of you have made images. That's not the selling point here. The selling point is this. That image, when it was generated, AI didn't just post it to the chat for me to get. It sent me an email copy of the image. That means that's in our logs. That means I can show some level of ownership and custody under my name, date and time, and what was created, and the service that did it. So I now have data for the other side of the argument. So when it comes to content ownership, this is a big deal. So if you want to use any kind of system, you need to ensure that if you're generating content, you have some ownership of it. And I think you'll find with a lot of the systems, especially the ones that are being offered to K-12, those conversations aren't happening. Versus a law firm, that's the first conversation. Whereas teachers are thinking about things they can use in the classroom, an attorney is worrying about protecting their intellectual property and their client's intellectual property. But what I'm saying is everybody can actually do this. Even some of the major providers for AI for schools, I've spoken to some of their engineers, we've had chats, I've sent them samples back and forth because they know, I've had a few of them reach out to me on LinkedIn when I've posted some of the stuff that I'm working on. And their infrastructure setup is not very much different than this. That means that they can actually customize it and add features. It's just people haven't been asking for it. So I spoke to one fairly large provider, and I said, are you doing any kind of like AI testing or checking? And they're like, well, we could. It's just that people haven't really been requesting it. So everybody's working really fast trying to get products out the door right now. So they have all these features, they just haven't turned them on, enabled them, or explored them enough. But I'm just telling you that it's not that difficult to do. Because natively, the AI can do it. If it couldn't do it, it's a heavy lift, but it can do it. All right. Now we're going to write a letter to a parent. So this will produce a perfect parent email every time, and that's fine. That's not a huge selling point. I just want to show you how the prompt works. So you can understand that if you implement a framework where you're controlling the prompts, what kind of voice you can give to your content. So every school is different and every school district is different. I have worked in 5 countries, and I'm telling you right now that parent emails and parent letters are very different based on the campuses. So I'm at a school in Mississippi that has been around since 1947. A parent email is that long for 2 sentences in the middle, okay? It is overly polite and very wordy on purpose. And it's going to start out explaining how great the student is before it gets into any problems. Other people are going to go for brevity. Some people are just going to put C minus, call teacher, okay? So there's a lot of different levels. So when you can control your prompting that everyone is using, so not just everyone typing their own prompts, you can tell the AI how to write things based off of your school or your school districts or your division or your grade levels standards. You actually can tell the AI to write as a Southern aristocrat or an educated person from New England, and it will do it. You can even tell it to write and make a few grammar mistakes to sound more casual. This is from a book called Never Split the Difference. It's a hostage negotiation book, and I use it to create all my content for parents, and it's incredibly effective. So I actually use those techniques that they use for negotiations to guide the AI in writing anything to parents. Now, some people think that is a joke, but it's not. It's very effective. The language is disarming, and it always gets me to the goal that I want. And in my job, I actually have to email parents a lot. And I'm always checking the language, checking the grammar, because it's nerve-wracking. And I don't email a parent, I email all the parents. So I'll send something out that goes to 2,000 people. And I need them to not just respond to it, I need them to feel good about it. So I read this book, and then I watched their training series on YouTube, and I'm like, I need to teach my AI how to write like that, because that's going to save me a lot of time, and it's also going to improve the quality of communication. But you can build all of this in based off of your school's standards and however you want to approach doing your different jobs. Okay, does anyone have any questions? We're all dead silent. Are you guys going to be like the university kids and email me and say that you actually enjoyed it? Has anyone implemented any kind of AI system at their school where you're hosting the models yourself, the district level? So my next talk in Mississippi, there's 3 different groups of people. One are kind of power users who are just using like Chat GPT Pro. They're paying for it for their offices. So either $20 or $200 a month to do professional level like office work with AI. Then there's me. This is technically considered what's known as an inference. That's where I'm using the services within my cloud. And then the other model is where a school district has they worked with Dell and they built an AI inside their school. So it's privately managed. Currently, I'm not pro that model because I think the landscape is changing too fast. So I think if you spend a couple $100,000 on AI hardware, that within 3 months, you'll be scrambling to make a major update, and within a year, you'll be behind whatever your teachers can use for free. So as you're looking at all of this tech and making evaluations, first off, you can reach out to me and I will send you any information that I have to guide your process. So somebody asked me if this is software. It's a framework, right? It is a framework. It's a live demo so you can understand how it works. It is very difficult to put this on paper. I tried that first, it didn't work. So I built this out so people could see it. But secondly, if your faculty, your people who work in your offices, if they can use a free product that's better than what you're doing, it's probably not a good investment. So I'll just say that again. If they can use a free product that is better than what you're doing, it's probably not a good investment. You're going to get compliance, meaning they'll say they're using it, but on the back end, they could just be running everything on their phone in an app. So you should work towards some type of solution that meets your security requirements and your logging and all that other stuff that people don't want to know about, but also has features that are comparable to what's out there kind of in the consumer market. There's going to be some trade-offs. I'm never going to have the little streaming. It's not going to work because I'm going through a filter. I'm not turning the filter off. That's the whole point of the framework. And I just tell people there's no streaming. It's just going to pop up on your screen. That's a trade-off. The upside, though, is you can tell me something that you do every day, and I can build that in, and you can just run it every day and save time. There's a million different ways to implement this tech, but you need to go about it as strategically as possible. So after the conference is over and you're regrouping, or maybe it's next year in August, if people say they want to use AI, ask them for what. Ask them what they're going to use it for every day and every week. They need to articulate what part of their work AI can help. And then if you're in tech or related, any kind of management position, try to sit down and work out the best strategy for them to use it and keep that prompt effort really low so that it's getting consistent output so that they can trust it. Until people trust it, it's just a gimmick. But it does work. I'm telling you it works. And if you're somebody that sits at the database level and you're making reports, this is rapidly going to replace that. So from a technology job perspective, this type of interaction with AI, you need to learn it as quickly as possible. Because if I can do it, a lot of people can do it. All right? Okay, any questions? I really appreciate everybody coming for my second time presenting this before I go into the hostile environment of the business community down in Mississippi. No, they're super nice, but yeah, it's kind of K-12 versus industry in that talk, so we'll see how it goes.